Hello, everybody. Welcome to Doug's Guitar of the Day, episode 12. Now, this next one, I don't even know where to start. It's got such a long, rich backstory to it. I'm not sure whether to even go through the details of the guitar itself or tell you the story. I guess I'll try to combine them both. Okay. Now, back in, I'm going to say, early 80s. 82 or something like that. I had a Gibson SG and I had a brand new 335. But I was always looking for something else to mess around with. And I always wanted an axe that looked like a Ted Nugent axe. But, you can't, there wasn't any birdlands around Decatur, Illinois. And so I had to find something that looked that close. And I didn't have any luck until one day I went into making music. And they had this Gibson ES 125 hanging up. And to me, it looked Ted Nugent-y enough. So I played it. And, I thought, well, it's close enough. By all accounts, this is a 62 ES 125. It was kind of a budget model from what I've been told. I think it's a 62. I'm going to go with 62 because I was born in 62. So let's just call it a 62. Anyway, I went back in to buy it. And I think it was around 300, 350. Not a bad deal at the time. Not a really screaming deal either. But I went to look and it was gone, and I said, "Well, what happened to that 125?" And they said, "Oh, it's downstairs in Frank Hubbard's shop." So I guess Frank Hubbard had a repair shop or a small store in the bottom of making music, and I went down there and this thing was hanging up. It had generic Bigsby tremolo, and I knew that wouldn't last very long. But other than that, it was in all original condition, with even the original case. So I bought it and took it home, and it really didn't play that well. It played, like maybe a good acoustic would, but for what I wanted to do with it, it really wouldn't do the trick. So I started thinking what I was going to do to keep it in tune. And originally, it had a rosewood bridge that was on two thumb wheels. I replaced that with the Tune-O-Matic. I went to Smith's Music and Forsyth Smith Music sold me a trapeze tailpiece. I could take that Bigsby off and put this on. And at the time, I wasn't doing a lot of my own guitar work, so John Gray in Champaign, Illinois, did most of this stuff for me. I found some keys. These are actually not the original keys, although I do have them. These are Schaller keys. So I took this John Gray and I said, I want a Tune-O-Matic bridge. I want you to put this trapeze tailpiece on. I want these keys. I want a graphite nut. Everything I could do to keep it in tune. And I was playing with the Bone Creek Boogie Band at the time, and I would try to use it on stage, and it was just so hard to handle because this body, it's plywood, but unlike 335 that has a solid chunk in the middle and is just hollow on the sides, this is completely hollow. So you had acoustic feedback to deal with, plus you had old single coil P90 pickups, which were commonly referred to back then as squealers, because they had this microphonic feedback that was really high pitched. So I was dealing with acoustic feedback and microphonic feedback, and I couldn't keep it in control. And Gary Osterhoff, Kenny Honecker, and Dave Peever, I know they would just wince every time I brought this guitar because they knew it would just, it'd be an ordeal. I tried graphic EQs, I tried everything. I never really could keep it in tune, so I kind of shelved it for a while. It was as good as it could be back then. So what had happened in this, actually I also used this guitar the first time on what we called the Christmas tape. Me and my friends Daryl Smothers and Todd Buckley used to make Christmas parody songs for years and years. Well, we started in 83, and we just hung a microphone, put it into a cassette recorder, and just made up silly stuff. Anyway, we played Silver Bells, and I remember using this guitar for that. So that's just something I remember this morning, that the first Christmas tape that I ever made with my friends, I used this guitar on it, which is a pretty cool thing to remember. So anyway, we'll fast forward to probably the next year. I'm guessing it was 84. There was another country band in town called Flat Branch. And I ended up being friends with them guys from the 80s up until the current day. Anyway, their bass player, Dave Kraft, had come over. I guess word had been out that I was looking for a Fender type guitar. I figured I better take the Fender plunge since I was playing country. He had one, but it wasn't much of one. But to me, it was close enough to a Strat. What he had was a Fender Bronco, which is kind of a student model guitar. I think the neck was full scale, but it only had one pickup, and it didn't stay in tune very well. And I tried the same thing on it, replacing tuners, replacing pickups, and basically we made a trade in 84 or so that he traded me that Fender Bronco and $150 for this. So I let this thing go, and I'm guessing on this, but I imagine Dave Kraft had this for probably another 10 or 15 years. So I ended up playing with Dave in the 95 Q band, and then in a later kind of blues-based classic rock band called the Thurston Howells. So I was over at his house all the time, and I'd always see this sitting on a stand. And I'm like, man, why don't you just sell that back to me? You're not using it. You know, every time I picked it up, the strings were rusty, and I thought, man, it needs some TLC. I need to try to use it again. He's like, oh, if it was up to me, I'd sell it to you, but my wife, that's her favorite guitar. So Dave's wife's name is Dani, and she knew I wanted it. So she would just say, every time I come over, she's like, oh, I bet you'd love to have that guitar back. And I'm like, and I did. I tried to let on like I did, and I would say, well, as long as I know where it is, I guess that's okay. So fast forward a few years. So Dave Kraft and I were in this band called the Thurston Howells, which were members of the 95 Q band we were in, some members of Flat Branch, and it was really a fun band to be in. We were playing a gig at the Southside Country Club. I think it was poolside or whatever. So we were setting up on concrete, and Dave's bass amp head had taken a fall, and it fell and kind of smashed on the concrete, bent the front panel and everything. And I tinker around with that stuff. He asked me if I wanted to try to take a shot at fixing it, so I did. I think it was a Hartke bass amp, and basically it just needed a new aluminum front panel, and I think a circuit board that the input jacks had been on. So I contacted the company, and I actually got the parts and got lucky and got it to work. So I think the next gig we had, I told him I had the amp fixed, and he said, okay. So when we met, he comes carrying this guitar in its case. And I'm like, well, what's going on there? And I'm like, are you going to sell that back to me? And he's like, well, I figured, you fix that amp. I figured it's a fair trade. I don't know how he talked his wife into giving it back to me, but I'm glad I did. So this guitar has a long story. But when I got it back, the neck joint had actually come unglued, so I had to have it repaired again. So I took it back up to Champaign to John Gray and had him reset the neck, and I had him pin the bridge base so it wouldn't slide around. And probably in the early 2000s, maybe, I started putting this back in rotation. I was playing just in a local band in Niantic, Illinois called Z Power, and I would get this out to do like Great White Buffalo or some Nugent song like that. And it was still hard to control, and I was having the same problems I had, 15 years earlier. I had microphonic squeal from the pickups, and it was hollow, and I was trying to manipulate these 4 controls, and I thought, I'm going to take this apart and rewire it. So the modifications that I've done to it, instead of having a volume and tone for each pickup, this is now the master volume, this is the master tone. These two are disconnected. So the pickups run to the switch first and then to the volume and tone. And then I also did a trick that I've done on one of my SGs where these P90 pickups are prone to pick up 60 cycle hum. So what I did is I flipped the magnets on this pickup and reversed the hot in the ground. And what that does is cancel that hum when you're in the middle position, so you've got a safe zone. So this thing always wants to feedback or squeal or pick up 60 cycle hums. So now it's easier to control. I've got one volume to shut it down and one quieter pickup position in the middle that I can leave it on. I just put a nylon saddle bridge on it not too long ago. It did have just an aftermarket ABR or Tune-O-Matic or whatever, but it's been pretty stable. The neck reset seems okay. It really. Another thing about this guitar that everyone is noticed, it actually, smells old. Really kind of a musty smell. And the case, I've got the original case, and it kind of smells like that too. So I had my buddy Justin Slifer borrow this for a while, and I think he borrowed it just for the smell. Us guitar players are weird, but I'm gonna try to give you an idea of what it sounds like here. And I know this is running on, but I think I've got everything that happened in this guitar in there. I usually don't name my guitars. I'd say, well, I'm going to use the 335 or I'm going to use the Brown SG or stuff like that. But just because Dave's wife, Dani, was so nice to let him give this back to me, I call this the Dani. So maybe I can talk Gibson into making one. It's really aged beautifully. It's got a lot of battle scars and checks and dings and stuff on it, but it's still together. Everyone that I've shown it to just loves it, and it's got some unique sounds. It's kind of got its own character going, so we'll see what we can come up with here. I'm not sure what to do first. Let's just get this music going. See you all on the next one. Thank you, Danny.